In Dallas, Texas, 3 shots were fired at President Kennedy's motorcade.
Why not a crime? If it doesn't fit, you must acquit.
Greetings and salutations, friends and neighbors. Welcome back to Sharecropper. It's always a pleasure and an honor to be a part of your day. Well, I hope you have a nice cup of coffee in front of you, or a cup of herbal tea, hot chocolate, whatever your pleasure is. We're going to have a great show for you today. Just remember that you'll know the truth, and the truth will set you free. The mainline media may not always bring you the truth, but that's our job. Anyway, always have a writing instrument and a pad of paper. Be ready to take notes. And in the meantime, I want you to enjoy a beautiful song, and then we'll see you over on the set. So, we love you. God bless. See you back in a couple.
What happened, sweet baby face? Was the weight of your world too heavy? What happened to the innocence of life? Quietly slipping, tired of gripping. Dark cloud overpowered this time. Words that scar, words that bruise, never fall on deaf ears. Broke the shell, stole your dreams, now picking up the pieces. Wish we heard your screams. It's now too late to show you kindness. A wall of sorries won't bring you back. Price too high for lessons made. The heavens still welcome you, sweet baby face. Words that scar, words that wound, never fall on deaf ears. Broke the shell, stole your dreams, now picking up the pieces. Wish we heard your screams. A price too high for lesson made. Oh, the heavens still welcome you, sweet baby face.
That was, of course, Courtney Spears doing Sweet Baby Face. Beautiful song, beautiful message. Thank you so much. And you know what? It's going to really fit with today's subject. So pay close attention, always have something to write with, and take notes. And you know what? I'm going to ask you always, please keep us in prayer because we want to stay on track here. Anyway, it's a pleasure and an honor to welcome an old friend. No, I don't want to say it that way. Not old, a longtime friend. And my age, you don't talk about age. Mr. Graham Rintoul from Rachel's Vineyard.
Hey, Jim. How you doing?
Thank you for being back with us, sir.
Absolutely. Thanks for the call.
You know, we haven't touched on the pro-life subject in a while, and especially abortion and how it affects people. And it affects more people than a lot of folks realize. We always think of the woman.
Right.
You're going to hit it from the man's perspective today.
Correct.
But one thing, you know, abortion is something that has just kind of become a blasé subject to some people. Oh, that again. What's on TV or what? Yeah. You know, we have just gone through a situation, the Gosnell trial, where a so-called doctor has heinously murdered innocent children, babies.
Sad stuff.
How do you even put this together in your mind? How can somebody do this? Take the most innocent little infant and break the necks and just do these horrible things to these babies. What can...
I can't fathom that. And even having been what I now call today a post-abortive father, looking back at the occasion back in 1975 where my partner and I decided that abortion was the right answer, and maybe at the time it was, clearly looking back, nowhere near the right answer. Mm-hmm. But to do that as someone's work, as a job, I mean, that just boggles my mind. I can't even conceive how somebody would do that.
I think most people that go into an abortion, they found themselves in a situation, probably unmarried, probably a very unhandy time to have a child. Yeah. Maybe they don't even want to have a child with that partner, but here they find themselves pregnant. And be it the man or the woman, they probably just really don't think about the ramifications, both of what's happening to the baby, right, especially if it's this partial birth abortion, which is basically murder. Mm-hmm. But they just don't think of all of the ramifications or how they're going to feel about it later on. Right. So tell us.
Part of it's the way we've been told by certain sources that, oh, it's a blob of cells, lump of tissue, not a person. But depending on your own belief, conception is the beginning of life. And from that point on, you've got what will become a human being. And clearly, as you get through fetal development, within literally a few weeks, it's beginning to look like a human being. Mm-hmm. And if anybody studies or even casually looks at some of the in utero pictures or an ultrasound or you name it, that's a person. Mm-hmm. And making the choice to do away with that person, it's just such a bad starting point for a relationship between that husband and wife or partner and other partner. That you don't overcome that very easily. It's the death knell of your relationship, I think. It's going to make it a certain amount of time, but you will end up apart. And for us, it took about 1.5 years, and we were separate. So having gone through having an abortion, which sounds funny for a man to say, but being a part of it is something you carry along inside. It's not something you're over. It's not something you can walk off. It's going to be there. It's a grief-driven pack of emotions and isms, like things that turn into alcoholism, gambling addiction, eating disorders, on and on and on. So there's a list of things that are related to that trauma and the guilt and the sorrow that, of course, as men, we're taught to never talk about those things. Mm-hmm. We're not allowed to have grief, you're just there. But when all that catches up, then you collapse. Your house of cards comes down. And for me, it literally took 32 years. But when it happened, it was to take me to the carpet right now. That was in 2007. So since then, having gotten involved in a healing program and then a second healing program, and then coming to realize, this is such a good work. And it's not something I chose. I believe it was God directed, absolutely, in my mind. So now I work on several retreats a year that we'll see anywhere from maybe 8 to 18 attendees, some couples, some singles, some single men, lots of single women coming through the program. They may be married, or possibly their current spouse doesn't even know there was an abortion prior to their involvement. But sadly, that level of secrecy in a relationship carries over. It just puts a stain on your relationship until you can come up and say, honey, I've got something to tell you. And you better sit down first. And then you have that conversation, and there's usually shock. Sometimes worse reaction, sometimes better reaction. It just depends on the couple. But I had to do that with my own wife of 23 years, who had no idea that long prior to our meeting that I'd been involved in abortion. And she's a very pro-life woman and 3 children. And so when I married her, I got 3 bonus children in the process. The youngest of which is now 32, I think, 11-year-old granddaughter. And
Goes fast, doesn't it?
Sure does, sure does. But consequently, having that conversation with her, that was probably the most difficult thing I've done. But I also thought back over the next 18 months about what were the ramifications of my really poor decision. One was my first marriage, which came about maybe a year or probably 18 months after the abortion took place. Ended up in a marriage where we both felt we didn't want children. So I thought, this is okay, I can do that, because I really was not wanting to be a dad, be a family man. And in about 5 years, we had kind of worked our path and ended up separating. But what I learned much, much later is the method we had chosen was an IUD. So during the path of our marriage, what you find out, an IUD does not prevent conception. So we could have had numerous conceptions that never went to term because the IUD prevents implantation. Essentially, it's an abortion. You've got this fertilized egg that has nowhere to go. So that conception is lost. So some people struggle with that because they've either been used the pill or any of the other methods supposedly that are going to be, quote, birth control. And they are, but they're not conception prevention. So there's this whole little backstory to some of those other methods that lead to, once you understand them, that you realize this could be a problem. This is something that I should not have been thinking about or doing in that manner. Because there's religious connotation to conception and specifically not having to have children for whatever reason. And I'm not going to go down that path. I don't have the detail on that one. But knowing that it's a God-given gift to have a child, and then saying, well, I know better than that, so I'm going to terminate this child. I mean, that's a tragic state of mind that I didn't realize when I was 22. Now I look back after learning more about the process of birth and conception, birth and development, more about what's happening during an abortion and how it does in fact affect both parents is something that most of us never know. And most men will not admit to even having been involved in an abortion. A lot of them, a quantity unknown, but a certain percentage might never know because it was a one-night thing and the mother never brought it to the father that said, oh, by the way, we're going to have a baby. And that's the key word, we are going to have a baby. So some guys will go through their lives and never know that they had a child somewhere. Others will have taken a part into saying, yeah, I'll support you in whatever you want. If you choose abortion, then I'm with you. And that was the slimy way out that says, it's your decision, but I'll support you afterwards in your, whatever it is.
Yeah, right.
Other men are, well, you're not having that baby. We're going to take care of that. And it's, it gets the whole blustery, almost physical, verbal abuse issues. Instead of saying, okay, do we really want to not have a child that badly that we should do something different? Or do we really want to have this baby and consider adoption? Or should we get married and have this baby and begin a family even though it wasn't our first plan? And everybody's got to go there and make that decision. But when you don't, when you do that whole abortion process, both parents are going to carry away an emotional load and a trauma load that they cannot deal with on their own because they don't want to. It's supposed to be okay in our culture. But when you realize in your heart that it's not okay, you've just terminated your own child. Whether it's mom or dad or both that come to that realization, you are going to carry that for an extremely long time. In my case, multiple decades before it came to light.
You know, we've been handed, as you said, the misbelief that this takes care of a problem.
Right.
We're not told that it creates a problem, many problems.
Essentially trades you problems.
Sure.
You think you have the pregnancy itself is a problem. But you say, okay, I will terminate this pregnancy. But what you don't see is in comes a bigger problem that you can't get rid of that simply.
Yeah. You've been involved in a murder, basically.
Right. Absolutely.
When it comes down. There was a movie, just a garbage movie, and I don't even want to say the name of it, but anyway, Fast Times at a Certain High School from the 80s. And the nice girl makes a mistake, gets caught up in things, gets pregnant, and at the end of the movie goes and has an abortion, and then she can just begin her life again, and she's the sweet little virgin all over again. Doesn't work that way, does it?
No.
Quick question for you. A person knows that they have been involved in an abortion. Later on in life, in your case, for instance, they realize that, hey, you know, there's something missing inside of me. There's something that's wrong. Why am I feeling this way? Why am I having these problems? What about the guy, the gal will always know, of course, what about the guy that was involved in that one-night stand? His baby was aborted without his knowledge. Is there still something, maybe something spiritual? Is there something inside of that person that there's a trigger, even though he doesn't know about it?
I'll say there could be. The Holy Spirit works in marvelous ways.
Okay.
But I think the vast majority of those fellas, unless they are got a solid belief structure in God, that they probably will never know. Unless mom comes along some 20 years later and says, you know, I remember that party way back when. And she tells the story that I became pregnant and I didn't want to call you and didn't want to involve you, but I, terminated the baby and, that kind of thing. But so that one nighter probably won't be a trigger for most of those guys. But in my case, the trigger was, I was directly involved. But still took many, many years, and through various things that transpired both at church and elsewhere, all of a sudden these things started stacking up and making me think more about, yes, I did this. I didn't forget about it. I simply flat ignored it. And with all this extra input to say, wait a minute, think about this. Abortion's not a good thing. It's got all of these ramifications in your life. And by the way, you should probably deal with this because it's going to eat you alive if you don't. And that's the message I want to bring to the men out there. If you consider that there's more than 50 million lost children, there's probably roughly that many moms and that many dads involved, because we don't do this by ourselves. It's a couple. So I think the women are more in tune with their emotions, and they come to realize sooner, but it still can take years, that some level of healing is required to get through this grief and et cetera.
So you're saying that probably at least 100,000 people.
100 million.
Or 100 million,
100 million people.
100 million.
Yeah.
That's a pretty staggering sum.
It's huge. I did a presentation where I had a map of the United States. And I took roughly that many, actually the 50 million lost children, and said, what does this look like? I took the census counts and started at the low end, at Wyoming, 500,000 total population, and worked my way up and blacked out states. 26 states were gone to represent 50 million. Half of our geography was considered completely empty. And the high school students that were in that presentation were shocked, amazed, and silent.
I want to bring something up that we talked about before we went on camera. You mentioned that someone that, let's say an associate of yours, in the course of conversation, now say mid-30s, upper 30s, admitted to you that she had had an abortion at age 18.
Right.
Okay. We think of a lot of people having abortions at about 17, 18, 20 maybe, but we don't think of that happening a lot in later years.
Right.
Now, that's a secondary area I want to go to, the number of abortions we see of people in their 30s and so forth. But this lady had become, as you said, a totally new person, a totally different person. She was not the same individual that she was when she was 18.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So she is moving on with her life. Now she has a chance to heal. She did something foolish as a child, and she can move on. But again, you and I both know that there are people clear up into their maybe even 40s that are still sexually active or to some degree that are still doing this.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something, again, that I don't think a lot of people think about.
Right.
We think of it as a youth problem.
Yeah, and it really is not. It's a poor choice problem. It doesn't fall in an age bracket. We've seen people in the retreat program who became pregnant at age 15 for whatever circumstances, and some of them are just tragic to listen to, up to people who come through the retreat process decades later, who are coming through the program in their late 70s, early 80s, to deal with a loss that took place 60 years ago. Because that loss does not go away. And in the circumstance you mentioned, when I realized in talking to this individual is she was old enough to be my child, chronologically. My child would be about 37. And then I realized, wait a minute, so that means her child could very easily be my grandchild. So this is a multi-generational. When you look back, what could have been? And it's always a little dangerous to go down that sort of path. And maybe if I did this decision or that decision, something would have been different.
Yeah.
And it clearly would have. If I'd done the right thing and we got married and we had that baby, then who knows, where it would have gone, the relationship, the marriage, to multiple more children perhaps, I don't know. But certainly there would be a child on the planet who themselves could be creating more family members, because that's what we were. We were all family. But then to hear it in the circumstance, the way I heard it, I'm thinking, wow, this is strong stuff. I do know she went on one of our retreats, and this is something that she kind of cornered me on later, because we were sitting side by side in a big circle, and basically we're all asked to share at various times and where we're going and where we've been and what did you think about what we just talked about. And I heard her for the first time. Let me tell this differently. She's asked me near the end of the retreat, she said, I heard you go at one point when I was speaking. And I said, what was that? I said, well, it's the first time I heard you say, that was my baby. So I knew she got it. She understood. And it took me a long time for me to do that, to say, that was my child.
Yeah.
No questions, no discussions, no doubts. That was my child. But that's the purpose that I'm involved in the healing programs. One, to get the message out that, gee, you've got this lingering in your past. And then how to help folks deal with it. So our retreats here in Oregon happen 4 times a year. And we're not the only program out there. And I'll work probably 3 of those, from here in town in Portland down to as far as Medford. And to me, it's just such a God's gift to serve others.
Yeah.
And I never thought I'd be doing that. And I was happy and clam-like in my silence for so many years. And God said, no, I've got a different path. We need to take you somewhere else. And oh, by the way, you're going to be on the radio, you're going to do stand-up public speaking, you're going to be on television, you're going to spread this message. And I say selfishly, I'm going to spread it more to the men, because we're dumb about this. We don't realize that we've got this leftover. And it's kind of sad for that one-night stand guy who just doesn't know. He's just kind of blissfully going along through his life. But for the fellows who were directly involved or who wanted that baby, and the mom decided, no, I'm not going to keep it, and may not find out until months afterwards that, yeah, I was pregnant. And all of a sudden, these guys are crushed when they realized, because they were looking forward to being a dad. That was my downfall. I was not looking forward to being a dad.
Yeah. There was a time in my life when I didn't think I wanted kids in my life, and I'm glad that God knew better.
Yeah.
Because I'll tell you what, with my 2 sons and now the grandkids and stuff, I wouldn't have it any other way. Yeah. It's such a blessing. I would have been so empty. I see people now that later in life they either chose not to have kids or couldn't or whatever, and there's just something missing.
Sure. I
have to say. And I mean, if that's somebody's lot in life, that's just who they are. Not everybody can have kids.
Right.
Real quickly, we're getting really close to time, but I think an unintended consequence that people haven't considered We as a Western culture, if anything, have decided that maybe we didn't want children or as many children or whatever, or we've aborted so many. You know, we're getting to retirement age, and that younger generation has thinned out to the point there's not as much income to fund our retirement generating in.
Yep.
We've kind of cut our own throats. Yep. That's just something that I heard about a couple of years ago, and it's like, it's just one of the unintended consequences. But,
Right.
you know, Graham, I really appreciate what you do. There are so many ministries, not enough, but so many that address women, you know, and Silent No More, and just
Right.
so many things, but not a whole lot that touch the men. And guys, if you're listening to this and you have an abortion in your past, get in touch with somebody. Get in touch with Graham. You know, you've got his contact information up on the screen, but be in touch with somebody. Get help. Reach out. Don't just let it eat you up on the inside. You've been involved in it. Well, you know what? Repent, go to the Lord, get healing, and move on. And then help somebody else. Take your healing and help somebody else. We're down to just less than a minute. Graham Rintoul, Rachel's Vineyard. I really appreciate, again, what you do. I appreciate you being here.
You bet.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Like any last 20-second vignette you want to give anybody?
You've said it already, guys. If you're out there and you realize that you made that mistake, God will forgive that. And what you need to do is make that phone call to any one of those programs and get on that first path to begin your healing zone. It's something that's hard to do. To have to admit that I did this. I was one of those guys, but I am one of those guys.
Making that admission is where it starts, though.
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir. Folks, in anything, go to the Lord in prayer. Get stuff cleared up with Him. Go to Him in prayer, and just keep short accounts. Keep us in prayer. Keep our country in prayer. We love you. God bless. See you next week. I would ask that you would please be in touch with us because we want to be a resource for you. You can do that by contacting me at P.O. Box 3076, Newberg, Oregon 97132, or the modern way email, sharcrpr@quixnet.net. Now, if you can think of a subject that should be talked about or a ministry to be highlighted, we're happy to hear from you. Also, if you need prayer, I'm happy to pray for you and or with you. Let us be a resource for you. Keep in contact with us, please. And you know what? Keep us in prayer because, again, we want to stay on track. You'll know the truth, and the truth will set you free.